I'm saying.
The Department of Justice has opened a hate crime investigation into this shooting incident. Acts like this one have no place in our country and no place in a civilized society.
The 21-year-old suspected of killing 9 people last night at a Charleston church is on a plane heading back to South Carolina from North Carolina. Earlier today, Attorney General Loretta Lynch announcing the Justice Department will open a hate crime investigation into the tragic shooting at Charleston's Mother Emanuel Church. Tonight, there are many questions about the suspect, Dylan Roth, and his possible interest in white supremacy. This photo of Roth, posted to Facebook last month, shows him wearing a jacket with patches linked to white supremacy groups. The top one, an apartheid-era South African flag. The bottom, the flag of the former white-controlled country of Rhodesia. Today, a former classmate of Roth's told the Daily Beast, quote, he had that kind of Southern pride, I guess some would say, strong conservative beliefs. He made a lot of racist jokes, but you don't really take them seriously like that. Joining me now are Candice Delong, a former FBI criminal profiler, and Paul Butler, a former federal prosecutor. Let me go to you first. Let me ask you your reactions. First, you as a profiler and as one that have studied these kinds of situations. I don't know if anything this horrific. What are you looking for in the profile?
Well, one of the things that struck me, one of the first things that struck me when I heard about this and looked into it was his age. He's rather young, much younger than we usually see people doing this kind of thing. And that led me to believe a possibility that, based on things his uncle said,
that's the plane we
to
just
his
saw,
sister, to his sister, the boy's mother.
You can continue. I just wanted to let our viewers know that was the plane that is now taking off from North Carolina, headed back here, bringing the suspect. But go ahead. I'm sorry for interrupting.
Okay, no, that's all right. A possibility exists, in my mind, for sure, of mental illness having emerged recently. There are a couple of very serious mental illnesses that emerge in the late teens, early 20s, and the behaviors that he was engaging in, not counting the shooting, but staying in his room all the time, being very introverted. His own uncle told the boy's mother there's something wrong with him. Very well could be a serious mental illness. We also saw this with Jared Loughner, the shooter in Tucson, Arizona, who shot Gabby Giffords and killed 5 or 6 people. And we saw it in Boulder, Colorado with James Holmes, who was in fine shape when he started his grad program. Within a couple of years, mental illness had emerged, and we know what he's on trial for.
Paul, we're hearing the possibilities of also a hate crime case here. When the Attorney General made her statement, how do they build a hate crime case in this?
So it's a sentencing enhancement. It's important to understand. There's not a separate crime called a hate crime, but if you commit another crime and there's evidence that your intent was based on ill will towards specific groups like African Americans, then you get more time. You get a tougher sentence if you're convicted. The other federal possibility, Reverend, is terrorism. That's what the Boston Marathon shooter was charged with. I looked up the definition of domestic terrorism. It's when you commit a crime with the intent to intimidate a civilian population. Actually, the first domestic terrorism law in this country was based on cases like this. It was designed to get the Ku Klux Klan when they were violent against African Americans. So I think if we think of this incident as a terrorist attack rather than a garden variety crime, even a murder, I think that would send an important message to the country.
Let me follow up on that. So if you could deal with terrorism as well as the murders and the hate crime, How do you put those pieces together? Clearly, the prosecutors have to be methodical, despite all of the passion and outrage many of us are feeling. What are they going to have to do with the case?
So the federal charges would be brought by the Attorney General, and of course there would be a historical resonance with the first African-American female Attorney General, someone who was raised in the Civil Rights Movement, being in charge of this prosecution. The federal prosecution would take precedence over the state prosecution. What they're doing now is two things. They're interrogating the shooter, the alleged shooter, first of all, to see if there's a plot or conspiracy, if other people are in danger. The other thing they're doing is trying to make a criminal case. So if they can get him to talk, if he says that he doesn't need a lawyer, he's willing to talk, then they are building evidence. Either way, Reverend, if it's state or federal, we're almost certainly looking at a capital case, a death penalty case.
Candice, how do we know from his profile whether it is likely he was operating with other people, whether he was a member of a group? I cited some of what we've already heard about, some of his Facebook postings. Does that tell us anything on whether or not there was any connection here? Are we dealing with a lone man, a young man who was deranged?
It looks to me like we're probably dealing with a young man who is deranged, may have at one time or possibly still a member of a group, possibly, on the fringe of that group. Sometimes these hate groups and domestic terrorism groups, they kick people out who are too crazy, and this has happened before. One of the things I wondered, Al, the picture that you were referring to of him standing in front of a swamp and looking very sullen and with the apartheid patches on his jacket, my question is, who took that picture? Was it someone in a group that he was with? Why didn't people see what was wrong? And we may find out some people did see what was wrong but didn't act properly.
Reverend, if I may, I just think we need to push back against this narrative that this man is deranged. That's true, but everyone who kills is deranged. Often, if it's a white shooter, we tend to think, well, they must have a mental illness. Whereas if it's an African American, he's a thug. If it's a Muslim or Arab, he's a terrorist. Again, this man clearly is deranged, and that does not mean that he deserves a special kind of solicitude. He is a mass murderer and a terrorist.
All right, Candice Delong and Paul Butler, thank you both for your time tonight.
He's a mass murderer, but he also is deranged.